When it comes to full-size pickup trucks, Chevrolet has been building them for well over 100 years. And even though the Silverado name has only been around for about 25 of those years, this truck has constantly been number 2 in the sales race, right behind the Ford F-150. Now, as most of you probably know, the full-size truck segment is going through an EV war with new rivals like the Rivian R1T, the Tesla Cybertruck, and the Ford F-150 Lightning. So today we're actually out here in Chelsea, Michigan to finally get behind the wheel of the all-new Silverado EV RST. It has the largest battery pack that you're going to find in the segment, allowing this truck to go up to 440 miles on all-electric range. So the big question I want to answer for those of you who are looking for a replacement for your Chevy Avalanche in this new electrified world, does this Silverado EV RST represent a good replacement? Stay tuned to find out. So it's been nearly 2 years since Chevrolet first showed us the production version of the Silverado EV RST, and unlike the Ford F-150 Lightning, this vehicle is built from a bespoke battery architecture known as Ultium. So Ford, as you guys know, started off with a gas F-150 and they plucked out the battery or the engine and the gas tank and put in batteries. Chevy, however, didn't do that. Now, in terms of the powertrain, let's go ahead and talk about that first. Now, as you can see, the vehicle has a power opening and closing frunk, and you basically push a button there, and sometimes this one's a really early pre-production truck. It has a little bit of trouble opening it up, but there, as you can see, now the truck actually opens up the frunk, and you can see here, Chevy says there's around 10.7 cubic feet of space. Now that is a very usable amount. As you can see, our backpacks fit very nicely. Chevy says you can actually put like a 22-inch roller bag in here, 2 of them. So this is a great benefit by going with an all-electric truck, although I will say that the F-150 has a slightly bigger frunk at around 14 cubic feet. Now you can also see it's electric, so you have some actual household power outlets, at least just one in here. There's also a little button here to get out of the truck in case you're locked in. There's also an LED light. And this is also a little bit smaller by a cubic feet versus the Hummer EV pickup truck, because as you guys know, the 2 vehicles essentially share the same platform. But since we're underneath here, let's go ahead and talk about the powertrain specs. Now, Chevy already released a work truck version of this vehicle last year. Sadly, we didn't get a chance to drive it, but we had our friend Alex from Alex on Autos do that. The RST that I'm showing you here is the first one that is going to show up in customer hands, because the work truck is only for, fleets, versus this one's going into customers, and it'll launch with essentially 2 electric motors. So electric motor in the front and in the rear, giving you electronic 4-wheel drive. Chevy says the output of this model, when you have it in its sport setting, which they call WOW for watts, wide open watts, it will be rated at 754 horsepower and 785 foot-pounds of torque. That is a pretty, healthy amount. That actually makes the Silverado EV RST the most powerful production Silverado that Chevy has ever produced. And it also gives it way more horsepower, nearly 200 more horsepower versus the F-150 Lightning, and also around 240 more horsepower versus the work truck version of this truck. Now, it all goes out through a 1-speed reduction gear transmission, and all Silverado EVs are going to come with the big battery pack. Now, Chevy wasn't ready to talk about the actual full, capacity of the battery pack, but we can assume that it's the same 212 kilowatt-hour unit that's in the Hummer EV pickup truck. So that's roughly almost twice the size of most of its rivals. If you guys remember, an F-150 Lightning has around 135 kilowatt hours. That allows this truck to go up to 440 miles of all-electric range. That's only 10 less versus the work truck version of this vehicle, which again gives it best-in-class range, and that should be great for those of you who actually plan to tow. The company says when you have it in the WOW driving setting, it should also sprint to 60 in under 4.5 seconds. This vehicle should have a top speed of around 110 miles an hour, and this is still a truck, so it has to do truck things. This vehicle will tow up to 10,000 pounds. It'll carry up to 1,500 pounds of payload in the bed, and because of the huge battery pack, this truck comes in and weighs just under 9,000 pounds. So obviously this is no lightweight. This is definitely going to be one of the heaviest trucks you're going to find in the segment. Now you can see the work truck actually didn't have the power opening and closing feature. It just had like a soft close feature, but it's a nice feature to have when you are trying to access the frunk. And you can see the styling of the Silverado EV is very different versus the gas-powered Silverado. That's because they don't share the same architecture. Remember, this is built off of the Ultium platform. So Chevy was able to do a lot with the styling, and they also claim this is the most aerodynamic pickup truck in the segment, and that's going to help, of course, with the range. I'm not entirely sure what the coefficient of drag is. They weren't ready to talk about those numbers, but you can see the styling is very distinctive. You have that signature and very trendy LED light bar that goes across the front end. It actually kind of reminds me of the Tesla Cybertruck, if you can believe it. They have the similar LED light bar. The Chevy bow tie here is also lit up, which is nice. You have these LED low and high beams, which are separate from the running lights. You can see It's down here in the lower portion. There's also a sequential style LED turn signal, LED daytime running light. Chevy says as you approach the vehicle, it actually will do a little light signature welcome dance to kind of let you know, hey, you're approaching your new Silverado EV. So that's kind of a nice little detailed touch. You can see the front fascia. There's a closed off grille here. There's some functional openings down here. No fog lights on the vehicle, but you can see there's some well-integrated parking sensors, your front cameras over here. And because this vehicle is all about aerodynamics, you can see the front splitter is kind of low, which helps again with the sport truck look of it, but you're not gonna be wanting to take this vehicle off-roading, even though it comes standard with an adaptive air suspension. We'll talk about why you will probably want to do that when we move around the side profile. But overall, let me know in the comment section below what you guys think of the styling. I mentioned the Avalanche because to me, this truck literally looks like a replacement for the Avalanche, which was discontinued back in 2013. But moving around the side profile, the Silverado EV is only offered in one cab configuration. So what you're looking at is a crew cab with a 5-foot by 11-foot long bed. So it's just shy of 6 feet. It's almost a foot longer versus the GMC Hummer EV truck. And because of that, GM or Chevrolet had to increase the size of this vehicle. So its wheelbase is around 145 inches long with a 233-inch long overall length. So it's around 10 inches longer in the wheelbase versus the Hummer pickup truck, and its overall length is around 17 inches longer. This is about the same size as the Ford F-150 Lightning. So if you're comparing it to a Cybertruck or the Rivian R1T, this is going to be longer by almost a foot and a half. So kind of keep that in mind. It's almost like a size above. Now, I mentioned earlier you don't want to take this truck off-roading, even though it does have an air suspension, because of this right here. These are the largest production wheels that you can get from the factory today. It's a 24-inch rim. That's right, I said factory 24s, riding on a 275 by 50 R24 Michelin all-season tire. So I guess it's a truck all-season tire. The wheels are absolutely ridiculous. I don't know why GM decided to go with a 24. I mean, obviously it looks good, it feels the wheel wells nicely, but we'll talk about the ride quality later on. Like I mentioned earlier, 4-wheel independent suspension with adaptive air suspension. So that's gonna help, of course, with raising and lowering the truck. Actually, in this normal setting right now, they weren't ready to talk about ground clearance, but you can raise it up by about 2 inches if you guys want to take it off-roading a little bit. The brakes are 14.8 inches in the front, 13.5 in the rear. So again, pretty big brakes. That's the one thing about the Hummer is the brakes felt a little bit undersized. So we'll talk about that later on during the driving scene. You can see it for a truck. It also has painted wheel arches, which are nice. And then the side mirrors you can see here are body colored. They're power folding, integrated turn signals and cameras. And then all versions of the RST are going to include that panoramic glass roof, which it doesn't open to vent air. It doesn't even have a shade on the inside, but it's nice because it lets in more light and it makes the cabin feel more open and airy. There's also no roof rails or anything like that on this truck. But again, the roof area of the vehicle with the glass definitely looks very futuristic. This area here is where I noticed that it reminds me a lot of the Avalanche, and that's because it has the multi-flex midgate. I'll show you guys that later on, where you can actually fold down the interior portion and extend the cargo bed from the inside into the truck. And then this vehicle also comes standard with rear wheel steering. That's something you cannot get in the F-150 Lightning. It's kind of similar to the one in the Hummer. However, in this vehicle, it doesn't allow you to do the crab walk feature where you can go like side step, side to side. It just helps with making the turning circle a lot smaller for this truck. Now, here's where you're gonna find the charge port door. Let's go ahead and talk about the charging capabilities. Now, this particular truck is gonna come with a 19.2 kilowatt onboard charger. That's very necessary considering there's a big 212 kilowatt hour battery pack that essentially allows this truck to charge from 10 to 100% on a level 2 in about 13 hours. So it's gonna still take a pretty long time because of how big the battery pack, but the onboard charger is twice as fast as what you're gonna find in other competitors and the work truck. This also will accept up to 350 kilowatts on a DC fast charger. So again, very necessary, just like the Hummer EV. GM says that you can basically add 100 miles of range in 10 minutes or go from 10 to 80% in about 40 minutes. So again, not the fastest, but it is the fastest if you look at how it accepts the, the charge speed, but that's because the battery is so big. That's why it still takes a lot longer versus something like, a normal sized EV like a Hyundai Ioniq 5, for example. Now, looking at the rear of the truck, this is also where I see a lot of design touches here that remind me of a next generation Avalanche. You can see the taillights are full LED where it has this interesting light signature and LED turn signal. There's a Silverado badge back here, and you can see the E has these 3 blue lines because Chevy says that's kind of to show everybody that you have an electric version of their truck. And you can see there's an RST badge here, which I feel like stands for Rally Sport Truck. I mean, it's going to tell you that it's the sportier option of the Silverado. Down here on the rear bumper, you can see obviously no exhaust tips because it's electric. Integrated parking sensors. This vehicle, like I said earlier, will tow a maximum of 10,000 pounds. I also like the fact that you have these built-in steps to kind of help short people like myself get into the bed. And then, just like other Chevy products, it also has the multi-flex tailgate. So you can basically open up the tailgate the traditional way, which again, there's a little button to hydraulically open it. Then you can also push this other button here, and that allows you to open up, you know, in the mid portion where you can essentially use this like as a table. You can also use this as almost like a bed extender where I can push this button here and open this up. You can kind of put like long pieces of wood back here and kind of help hold it in place. And then you can also kind of open it up here and then push this button too. And you can also kind of pull this down to where you can use this as a step. There's also a little bit of a handle that extends out that you can use as a handle to kind of help you get into the bed. Like I said earlier, this bed is 5 feet by 11 inches deep or long. So it's around a foot longer than something like the Hummer EV. And you can also carry up to 1,500 pounds of payload in the bed. Chevy says that with the midgate folded down, you can actually put items as long as 10 feet by 10 inches. 10 feet by 10 inches. So that's very, very practical, very usable. There's also Pro Power on board or power on board. You can see in this area here, you're going to find an actual level 2 plug. You can find actual 110 household outlets. So there's 4 of them there. And then there's that plug there allows you to basically charge another electric vehicle, which is a nice touch. And then you can also open this up. There's a little bit of a hidden storage compartment there. So lots of nice features and whatnot in this truck. Chevy says that you can actually use this truck to power your house. So it has V2H capability, which means when you have it plugged into that CCS combo port over there, if your power goes out and you have the necessary equipment, Chevy says that with a full charge, this truck could theoretically power your house for up to 21 days. Now, of course, that's always going to be dependent on how much power you're using at your home, but it's just like the F-150 in the sense that you can use this vehicle as like a rolling generator, and that's kind of the whole point of, you know, buying a truck like this, having it for the lifestyle aspect, but also having it for in case of emergencies where you can actually use it to power your home or your campsite. So moving on to the interior of the Silverado EV RST. First thing I noticed when I get into the truck, it actually has a traditional pull-style door handle as opposed to those finicky pop-out ones that you might find on some rivals. And as you can also see, my particular test truck isn't exactly the best color combination for filming, but we have a black exterior with this black interior that has this leather covering it. It's perforated. You have heated and ventilated seats. You also have this contrast red and blue stitching and accents. It certainly looks nice. You also have a big first edition badge here because the RST first editions are going to be the ones that are in customer hands. The seats adjust in 10 different ways, and you also get 2-person memory here on the driver's side. So that's pretty much what you expect. The leather also feels pretty high quality. The seats also aren't really aggressively bolstered, but they, for the most part, are relatively soft, padded, and comfortable for longer trips. Now, getting inside the truck, there's a running board that kind of helps short people like myself get in, although I did notice there's no grab handle here, so you kind of have to use the steering wheel to kind of hoist yourself in as I get into the truck and then shut the door. The door has a pretty solid sounding thunk. Remember, this is built off of the Ultium architecture. Now, if you guys saw our review of the work truck that Alex did, you'll know that it had a really small 11-inch display in the center with an 8-inch display in the instrument panel. Once you're inside of this one, you can see the screens are much larger. To turn the truck on, just like a Tesla and other vehicles like a Rivian, I believe, you just sit your butt in the seat, have the key fob on you, which as you can see, here's the key fob for the truck. It's not like a special looking fob compared to other Chevy products. It has a lot of buttons here for lock, unlock, remote start, open up the tailgate, open up the frunk, and then panic function. I believe Chevy also offers phone as a key, but I'm not entirely sure if that's the case, but I know you should be able to access this through your smartphone as well. As I put my foot on the brake, you can see that's what turns the truck on. So there's no actual start-stop button. You just sit your button here with the key, put your foot on the brake, and then you can hear the chime comes on and all the screens also turn on. But let's go ahead and talk about the interior materials because this truck is pretty darn expensive. And you can see the door panel has this kind of like rubberized finished upper finish here that is not really padded, but it kind of, I don't really love the texture of it. You have some matte painted black plastic over here with this aluminum accented door handle. It is nice and padded here where I would rest my elbows. And then the driver window and passenger window are one touch up down for both. The rear is one touch down, but not one touch up. I think at this price point, Chevy should have just made one touch for all four. Looking at the steering wheel, you can see this is the newest GM steering wheel with the RST badging. It's got a nice thick rim with red contrast stitching, and then you can see my test truck also comes with their Super Cruise function. So it's their hands-free driving on the highway. You can also use it to tow. We'll show you guys more of that later on in the driving scene. It also has a power tilt and telescoping function. So again, features you all expect in a vehicle that weighs or that costs close to 6 figures. Looking at the dashboard, you can see it's very expansive, and you also have that same rubberized texture material here on the upper dash. You can see there's some faux stitching. Although I will say the contrast stitching, I don't love how it's not lining up properly. There's like areas where you can see there's a stitch there that's a little bit lower than that stitch over here. So something like that is kind of a nitpick, but it also kind of bothers the OCD in me a little bit. You have a little bit of a storage shelf here. And then up this upper portion here, you can see there's a lot of like hard plastic over here. Although you're not going to touch that, I don't love the ridges that it has. I just think that it doesn't look fantastic when you're seeing it from the driver's seat. Now, in front of me here, there's also a heads-up display. And then when you guys go for the RST trim, the highest trim, you get a 12-inch display, an 11-inch display here in the instrument panel. So it's wider and larger versus the work truck. And then you get Chevy's biggest screen here, a 17.7-inch display. So this is definitely appropriately sized given the fact that this is, a big truck. It takes up the entire, or the screen goes from this corner all the way to this corner here, which is very nice. The downside about this system is if you guys really like wireless CarPlay and Android Auto, it's not on this infotainment system. So just like on the Chevrolet Blazer, this lacks CarPlay and Android Auto. Chevy says that they can get rid of it because the native system, which is powered by Android Automotive, it's Google-based, is also just as good. And I have to say, the screen response is very quick and snappy. The graphics and resolution looks good. And you can see my phone is connected via the Bluetooth, and it also has Waze built in. So if you guys use Waze as your GPS function, click on that. You can see it brings up the Waze with all the usual privacy notices and whatnot. But you can see you can scroll out of this. It takes up the entire display. So that looks pretty nice. You can still report cops, you can report roadblocks and stuff. Waze is what I use when I'm actually using GPS, so I like to see that it is included in there. If you guys also listen to Spotify, you can see Spotify is also included. This vehicle will also read text messages aloud. You can also respond with your voice via text messages when your phone is connected. So it still gives you that basic functionality, but I think some people still would prefer to see the full CarPlay integration. So I'll have to wait until I live with this system for a full week to see if I actually find it a viable replacement. You can see because it's Google, it has Google Maps built in, and the beauty about having Google built into the car's native system is when I input a destination, it'll basically tell me where I need to stop to charge and for how long. So that's exactly what Tesla does. It comes with the route planning. It's all built in. It also will tell you how much charge you're going to have when you get to that destination, how long you have to stay at that charging station. So all those features are important when you're actually road tripping in your EV. It also has really great voice commands, so I can say something like, "Okay, Google, find me the nearest Target."
Got it. There's a Target 15 miles away. Want to navigate there?
No. So you can see the voice commands work really well. It's very quick and snappy, and it also works pretty much just as nice as what you're going to find in like your computer, for example. So love the new system. The screen size is also fantastic. It's among the biggest you're going to find in the industry. And if you guys are looking at the Silverado or the Sierra EV, this is actually a slightly larger screen by about an inch. The Sierra's screen is going to be more of the tablet style as opposed to the portrait style. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, looking at the rest of the screen here, if you guys are looking for like your headlight controls, for example, they have moved into the screen like so many other GM products, but there's like a quick area here where you can access that. If you're looking for the drive modes, you can tap on that. This vehicle has 4 different drive modes that you're seeing here, and then a 5th one, which is watts, wide open watts. When I push that, it actually will play that sound effect to let you know that you're in the sport mode. This is where it unleashes the full 754 horsepower. So we'll show you guys that later on in the driving scene when we actually launch the truck. Your one pedal drive feature is right here where you can turn that on and off. You can set the level here. We can go between off, normal, and high. I will say that the normal is already very strong for one pedal drive. The high is just way too much. I also like the way the graphics look there, so that's all really important. If I put the truck into reverse, you can see there's your full top-down 360 camera. In fact, I believe this truck gives you a total of 14 different camera views, including a hitch view if you guys plan to load up a trailer. Again, with its big battery pack, 10,000 pound towing capacity, Chevy says this is the first EV truck where you can actually reliably tow and go a pretty good distance, and that's because of how large the battery pack is. Now, down here in the lower portion of the screen, you can see there's dual zone temperature control. You have your heated and cooled seat function here, which is a nice touch. You have actual buttons here, or actual other buttons to control the other climate. You can see on this side, you're going to find your passenger side stuff. You have traditional air vents to where they're not, adjusted via an electronic part on the screen. You have actual dials here. If you want to adjust the temperature, you can actually go to here to an actual dial as opposed to using the screen. Actual shortcut buttons here if you want to put it into like an auto setting for the climate function, which is also a nice touch. Your wireless phone charging pad is down here, which as you can see, it fits my iPhone 14 Pro Max nicely. There's two USB-C charging ports, and then you can see there's also another power outlet over here if you want to use a traditional power outlet. The one thing I don't like about this interior is all the piano black plastic. So you can see there's a lot of dust, a lot of fingerprints. This is going to show scratches very easily. So kind of keep that in mind. If you guys are a neat freak, you're going to have to be wiping this down constantly. I also don't particularly love how, there are some materials in here that feel a little bit chitsy. I think for, the price point, GM should have used more luxurious interiors, but it's kind of similar to the way the Hummer EV is with the interior quality. It's not going to be the most luxurious feeling. Now, there is an upgraded Bose audio system in this truck. It sounds pretty decent. If you guys, are audiophiles, you'll like it. It's important because this is an electric vehicle. There's no engine noise. Over here on the center console, you can see their badging there to show that you have the special first edition. There's more contrast stitching. It's nice and padded. And then if you want to open this up, you can see there's another USB charging port in there. That's actually where you can connect your phone to the screen if you want. If you don't want to do wireless Bluetooth, for example, you can see a nice storage area. Chevy says that this can hold about 7 gallons of items. So great place to store like your lunch, your keys, your wallet, all the other knickknacks and whatnot. So a lot of storage options in this truck. I just don't particularly love how the interior quality doesn't feel up to par, especially considering the price point. But the tech in this vehicle is great. You just have to get used to the fact that it lacks Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. Above me, you can see the big panoramic glass roof is nice and dark tinted. This doesn't open up to vent air, but I love how it's just one big piece of glass. There's also like a woven material here on the actual roof liner. There's also a pretty good amount of headroom space. We'll talk about that when we get into the backseat area as well. But overall, the interior definitely feels modern. The seats are comfortable. There's a lot of great tech features, a lot of great features in general, a lot of great storage options. It's just if you guys are looking for something with more of a luxurious feel, you may want to wait or consider waiting for the Sierra EV version, because that I expect GMC to do an even nicer interior. Now moving to the rear seat of the Silverado EV RST, this is where it's going to seriously remind you of a Chevrolet Avalanche, and that's because of the multi-flex midgate. And I'll show you guys how to open and close that. It's a little bit of a 5 or 6 step process, but the legroom space back here, as you can see, is plentiful because of that super long wheelbase. Chevy says there's around 44 inches of legroom back here, which is a nice touch. Obviously, there's also a little bit of storage underneath here. Although I don't believe you can actually lift the seat up like this because of the way that the seats fold. So first of all, if you want to fold down the midgate option, you have to first start by pulling on this little strap right here. So you can see that allows you to slide the seat forward. It allows you to find a little bit of underfloor storage space over here. This is actually your mobile charger, I believe. And then you basically have to pull on this strap here, and that will release this seat. Now, when you release it, you have to also fold down the headrest here, and you can see that allows you to fold this down. And the cool thing about the multi-flex midgate is it allows you to also fold down one side, which is the bigger side here, and keep a seat in place. Because if I push this button here, you can see this allows me to fold this down where I can get access into the actual bed. So with this folded down, Chevy says you can put items up to 10 feet by 10 inches in the length. And it's also nice that they kind of give you the flexibility to fold this down and then leave one seat down. Now you cannot fold that seat on its own. It has to be the bigger portion. That's because of the way they have the system laid out to where you have to fold this down first, and then that one has to be fixed into position. It has to be behind this little panel. But to open up the entire panel, this is where I'll need Rob's help. So he'll have to do the same thing on the other side, along with pulling that strap. I'll help him by pushing this down, and then you can see push that down, and that folds that other side down. Now to fold the entire piece down, you actually have to go in here, push this little clip down. Rob will do the same thing there. And it's nice because there's a little area here that catches the glass from falling, because I imagine if they didn't have that, it would fall and shatter, which isn't great. So to pull that out, you kind of push that in, pull the glass out, and then the glass panel actually will stay right here, where it kind of just clicks into position. Now, it takes a little bit of finagling sometimes. Like, for example, I kind of shoved it in here and I didn't actually have it lined up. So there we go. So have that lined up properly to where it's actually held down. And then you can basically push on this, and this allows you to fold down the entire panel back here. So when you do that, you can see the opening is massive. It goes all the way from here to here. So this allows you to put like a kayak back here. It allows you to put something, really large to kind of extend the length of the tailgate, obviously, which is something that the Chevrolet Avalanche offered. So putting this back into position, I'll need Rob's help a little bit. The seatbelt, as you can see, kind of gets a little bit stuck, and then we'll take the glass panel out. We'll put this back into position here. Chevy actually makes it pretty simple. It's just takes a little bit of practice, and then push this back up. Same thing on the other side. Thank you, Rob. And then pull that back up and then fold this down. So again, it's a pretty clever piece of engineering, and it's really great that Chevy gives you that amount of flexibility. Now getting back here, let me show you guys a couple of other features. Now, as I shut the door, you can see material quality back here is really plasticky. So this is a different material versus what's in the front seat. It's all hard touch plastic. You have some silver painted accents for the door handles, slightly padded over here. Window controls, they feel relatively high quality. You can see Bose stereo back here, but in terms of the space, just check out all the headroom space, all the legroom space, which is fantastic. The floor is completely flat here, which is kind of similar to other trucks. You have heated rear seats back here. You have rear seat air vents. You also have 2 USB charging ports, an actual power outlet here. You also have 2 storage cubbies. And if you want to fold this down, you can see there's an armrest here with 2 cup holders. So overall, the backseat area is basically as big as the gas-powered Silverado, but I think what might sell people is the fact that that midgate folds down. It really gives you the kind of flexibility that you're not going to find in a lot of other trucks in the segment. So the Silverado EV RST is the most powerful production Silverado that Chevy's ever made. With 754 horsepower, let's go ahead and see how this thing launches down basically a drag strip. All right. So we have it in the wide open watts already. It's in its lowest suspension setting. We're gonna brake torque it and then let go. Oof. This thing definitely gets a little squirmy. All right, so we got 0 to 60 in 4.32 seconds. Chevy did say it would take around under 4.5, and then also with the 4-wheel steering, you can see actually was pretty easy to make a U-turn as well there. So that's something that the F-150 Lightning doesn't have, is the 4-wheel steering. But I will say that I got a slightly faster time in an F-150 Lightning, where I think I got like 3.8 seconds, and that's because, remember, even though we've got 754 horsepower, this truck weighs almost 9,000 pounds, but still 4.3 for something this big is still nothing to sneeze at, and this thing is fast. All right, so run 2, they told me not to brake torque it this time, just floor it. We're in wide open watts, we're in the lowest setting, and ooh, definitely feels faster, holy smokes. All right, there we go, 4.18 seconds there. So that is a time that's a little more acceptable for me. I mean, it's still not quite as fast as the Lightning, but still, it feels a lot faster. I also like the fact that you don't have to brake torque it. You don't have to wait for a suspension to lower and do all this kind of crazy witchcraft that the Hummer does. So they give you the power a lot more accessibly, and, you know, just putting it in wide open watts and just flooring it from a stop, doing it in the just over 4 seconds is pretty impressive. Remember, this is a 9,000 pound truck, 754 horsepower, big 200 plus kilowatt hour battery pack. And I think that kind of performance is, you know, what people are going to be demanding when you're, you know, spending this kind of money for a performance EV truck. So we've moved off the drag strip and we're heading over to the drive base where we'll be doing most of our filming for the day on this truck. But let's go ahead and talk about how the Silverado EV drives when you're actually out in the real world. Now, I also forgot to mention when we were doing the wide open watts, you know, launch control thing, or the launch, this truck, we started out our day with around an 86% state of charge. It was showing around 385 miles of range. When we were doing the launches, the truck had about 75% of the battery capacity. So about 3/4 of the battery. Right now we're at 73%, it's showing 327 miles of range. I'll have to wait until I get one back home to do some extensive range testing, but the fact that it had almost 400 miles of range when it had around an 86% charge is good. I mean, we are essentially driving, you know, the biggest battery pack that you can get in the EV truck world, so it doesn't surprise me, but it also makes this truck feel incredibly heavy when you're driving it, which a lot of the EV trucks do. The last time I drove a Lightning was about maybe 4 or 5 months ago, and I definitely noticed that this truck feels heavier than the Lightning. The other thing about the Silverado EV is it's built off of a dedicated EV architecture, unlike the Ford, where it's built off of, you know, an internal combustion platform, and then Ford essentially swaps out the gas tank and the engine for electric motors. So that's something to keep in mind. This is a dedicated EV truck as opposed to the Lightning. But The RST version is unique because this model here comes with the biggest factory, wheels that you can get at 24 inches in diameter, a 275 width tire. I looked on the actual sticker of where the tires are supposed to be recommended for tire pressure. It says 60 PSI, which is just absolutely insane. That's like semi-truck levels. But again, 9,000 pounds, big fat wheels. We've been driving it around Detroit, and we've definitely noticed the ride quality in this truck is not the plushes. You hit a bump in this thing and it will crash pretty hard. You can kind of feel the body shake a little bit from the glass roof. So not great first impressions. I almost think that Chevy should have just gone with a 22-inch wheel. I just don't think a 24 is really necessary for something like this, but put your foot down here, and as it gets going, when we're already moving, it still feels pretty fast. I mean, you have to have it in the wide open watts mode, wow mode, to get the full 754 horsepower. But what's great about this truck is, unlike the Hummer EV, where if you want to get maximum 1,000 horsepower, you have to put it into the WTF, watts to freedom mode, and that is only allowed when you're at a stop and you're only launching the truck, so it doesn't give you the full 1,000 horsepower all the time. This truck, however, will give you the full 754, so it's a lot more usable, a lot more accessible, and I think that's what Chevrolet was obviously looking for with the Silverado EV. Whoa, don't like this big truck. No. I was like, nope. Fuck you. Your fucking oversized load. So as we get onto the interstate here, we'll get a chance to try out the Super Cruise, but I just want to talk briefly about just its highway driving dynamics. First of all, the 24-inch wheels also make themselves known because you do hear a good amount of noise coming into the car. Actually, I hear some wind noise, especially around this area here when I'm driving over 70 miles an hour. It almost sounds like the truck has a window open, and I double checked to make sure it didn't have any windows open. So it's not quite as quiet as I wanted it to be, but again, the roads here in Michigan aren't the smoothest or the best, so I'll have to wait until I get one back home to retest it. I also hear a fair amount of road noise because, again, these are massive tires with 60 PSI inflation ratings, so you're gonna notice that just any kind of imperfection, it's gonna transmit its way into the cabin. And then my test truck also, I don't know if it's an early pre-production. There are a couple of squeaks and rattles here and there, but again, I'll wait until I get one back home for a week to test out. In terms of the visibility, you can see out of the front pretty well, out of the sides, good. This pillar is a little on the thick side. And then there's a digital camera rearview mirror that's standard on this trim. If you don't have it on, your view out of the back, I wanna say, is okay. It's pretty average. I mean, Chevy says that the Silverado EV is the most aerodynamic electric truck on the market. I'm not entirely sure if that's a true claim. I don't know or Chevy didn't actually tell us what the coefficient of drag is, but the Cybertruck is also a pretty aerodynamic truck. Same thing with the Rivian, so I'll have to wait, to double check that, the facts on that. But overall, as I go down the road here, let's go ahead and try out the Super Cruise. It says it's available, so it shows a gray steering wheel icon here. I just push that, and then it turns blue to show that the adaptive cruise is on. And then there's also a status bar here to show that it's not giving me full hands-free. Remember, Super Cruise, Chevy says they have over 750,000 miles of maps laid out in their database, and I guess right here it's just giving me adaptive cruise, so it's not giving me the actual Super Cruise function until that status bar turns green, and it is a solid green light. But if you guys do prefer something with hands-free driving, Chevy is the only truck manufacturer, the only brand that offers the ability to use hands-free driving and tow at the same time. So if you guys do a lot of towing, you do a lot of highway driving, this is where the Super Cruise could come in handy. And here we go. Now it's finally turned green. Not sure why it took so long, but now essentially we can drive completely hands-free in this truck, and it'll even execute lane changes. It'll also do a lanes change on its own, where it'll check your blind spot, it'll move over if there's a slower vehicle in front of you. The one thing I didn't notice if it did was something like what Tesla offers, which is their Navigate on autopilot. I noticed when I had the GPS route active, it was still kind of going to the left lane even though I had an exit coming up. So that's something that perhaps Chevy might do in an over-the-air update. You can see the BMW in front of us is slowing down a bit, so the car, I could feel the truck was also slowing down. So again, Super Cruise is one of the best systems in the industry. So if you guys really do a lot of highway driving, this could be a reason to pick this. And of course, its twin, the GMC Sierra EV. Now, in terms of just going down the road here, I find the seats to be relatively comfortable. They don't have much in terms of bolstering, which is funny to me because this is an RST. I guess I expected slightly more aggressively bolstered seats. No massage functions available. You do have heated and cooled seats, which is nice. And then right now the trip computer is showing it's averaging just shy of 2 miles per kilowatt. So that's not very efficient, but Again, we've been driving this truck out on a drag strip. It's been driven by journalists. It's probably an early pre-production vehicle. Let me go ahead and signal on my own here. So I'm signaling left. It checks my blind spot to see if there's nobody there, and then it will change lanes and execute that lane change, and then it'll recenter itself back in the lane. You can see lots of braking up ahead here, but you know what? The truck is doing a pretty good job of slowing the vehicle down. It got me a little nervous. The car in front of me has its hazards on right now, but there's like construction coming up, and it actually will let you know if you're going through a construction zone as well, to kind of tell you to be more vigilant, or like just be more aware of your surroundings and whatnot. But overall, out on the highway on smoother pavement, the truck rides fine. It has plenty of power. You guys saw 0 to 60 is crazy. It's just when you drive this truck around town a lot more and you notice the ride crashing over those really terrible potholes, that's kind of where it reminds you 24-inch wheels might be too big. But overall, you know, I think that Chevy has done a really good job as their first effort. They also say that with the big battery pack, you know, you can actually tow relatively farther distances. Obviously, I'm not going to be able to tow here and, you know, test out that claim, but I am relatively impressed with the fact that this truck was showing, you know, almost 400 miles of range when it had an 86% state of charge. So even though Chevy was a little late to the EV truck party, it's pretty easy to see why the company took their time, because they were trying to essentially give us what, you know, people want, and that's extra range. Because with that large 212 kilowatt hour battery pack, this company is promising up to 440 miles of range, which is the top of the segment. Really only the Tesla Cybertruck is able to beat that number, and that's when you buy the optional range extender, which actually takes up space in the bed. So that's a great accomplishment of General Motors. This vehicle also has one of the most, you know, quickest accelerating trucks you're going to find, with up to 754 horsepower. As you guys saw, 0 to 60 in just over 4 seconds makes this the quickest accelerating Silverado ever. Not the quickest accelerating EV truck out there, but again, just over 4 seconds is certainly not slow. And you also get all the capability and technology that you expect from a vehicle that wears the Chevrolet badge, and from a company, as you guys know, has been building trucks for well over 100 years. There are a couple of gripes that I have with the Silverado EV, and they may just be limited to this RST trim. Mostly it's going to be centered around those massive 24-inch wheels. They really do affect the ride quality, so be sure to drive this truck, try it out for yourself, make sure that the ride isn't too firm for you. Even though this truck has adaptive air suspension, I'll be really curious to see how the Escalade IQ is going to fare, because the Escalade IQ also has 24-inch wheels, but I think it'll also get a magno-rheological damper in addition to the active air suspension. This truck I don't think has the magno dampers, so that could improve the ride quality further. I love the fact that it has 4-wheel steering, because it makes this big truck drive like a smaller truck. That's something you cannot get in something like the Rivian R1T, for example, or the F-150 Lightning. So that again makes this a lot more maneuverable and easy to drive. I also love the Midgate function, because it just gives you that kind of flexibility, and that's probably why the Avalanche also did really well with a lot of consumers who actually needed to do truck things. So again, I kind of use this vehicle as a replacement, an electric replacement for an Avalanche. And when you drive the truck, this is where the driving characteristics of the Silverado EV also feel different, because the F-150 Lightning to me drives like a pickup truck, because it's built off of a body-on-frame architecture. This truck, however, feels more like a big SUV, and that's because of the Ultium platform. It has an all-independent suspension, it has that skateboard architecture, and it just feels like a big, heavy SUV as opposed to a pickup truck. And if that's something you prefer, that's gonna be, you know, a nice feature to have. But if you guys are coming from a traditional ICE-powered Silverado, this is where this truck is gonna feel completely different versus your old Silverado, which may or may not be a good thing. I'll be curious to know what the actual range is going to be when I have one for a full week to test out, because again, the other long range EV that I've tested that did around 400 miles of range was a Lucid Air Grand Touring, which again is one of the most aerodynamic vehicles out there. So I think by, you know, Chevy taking their time and giving us that extra range, they're giving, you know, consumers what they're looking for, and that's more, you know, or less range anxiety because of the additional, you know, size of the battery pack. But it also does affect the vehicle in terms of the handling dynamics, and in terms of the weight, and of course in terms of the price. Because if you're looking to get your hands on the Silverado EV RST, this is not a cheap truck. In fact, if you want the work truck, the pricing for that vehicle starts at around $80,000, which is just absolutely insane considering how, you know, inexpensive the truck actually looks. If you're looking at this vehicle here, they only come as one well-equipped trim, and that's because this is the launch vehicle, the first edition. All of them basically come with everything. You basically pick your exterior color, and this truck comes in at just over $97,000. I know basically $100,000 seems like an outrageous amount of money, but if you do look at the F-150 Lightning, a platinum version, which would compare with this vehicle, does also come in at around $90,000, but the Ford does have a couple of other features like a bigger frunk. It also has a nicer interior with the massaging seat function, so it feels a little bit more luxurious. There's also the Sierra EV that's coming out as well that'll be priced around the same. That'll have a different look, a nicer interior perhaps. And again, it'll be priced around the same. There's the Tesla Cybertruck, which if you go for the Cyber Beast, that's also over $100,000. So kind of keep that in mind. A Rivian R1T quad motor is also around $90,000 to nearly $100,000. So Chevy has priced this truck in the realm of all of its competitors, but I also just wonder if they've also priced it a little bit too high, considering the fact that the interior and the ride quality were a little bit too jarry and a little too cheap feeling, at least in my opinion. Now, if you guys don't want this trim, Chevy is going to eventually launch an LT trim, so lower trims of the truck, and they're also going to come out with a Trail Boss trim. That'll be coming sometime next year. So that'll give the truck more of the off-road capability, because this RST is definitely more of a street truck. But again, if that's what you're looking for the most powerful production Silverado ever, and again, something that has street truck cred, you should definitely be taking a look at one of these, because again, it is built off of GM's excellent Ultium platform. But with all that said, hope you guys have enjoyed my full overview on the brand new 2024 Chevrolet Silverado RST. If you're also looking to see the latest cars I'm testing, be sure to follow me on Instagram at redline_reviews, like us on Facebook, and as always, guys, please keep subscribing to the Redline Reviews YouTube channel for all the latest reviews. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next video.